Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Now, Stomping Jen, I need to clarify something. Whoop, I did my favorite thing and muted you before, and you tried to speak and you were unmuted. Now, I need to clarify something.
Yeah.
This episode is not for entertainment purposes only. It is for educational purposes. Oh. We are going to be talking about something very important. Would you like to know what?
Yes. Global
vaccine equity.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And on the podcast to talk to us is Risa Silverman, a community leader and a public health educator who is involved in a fundraiser for the People for Global Vaccine Equity. Now, as usual, I have lots of questions about all of this, and we are going to dig deep. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Roll up your sleeve, swab your arm, and get ready ready for a dose of important information.
Oh my God.
Okay, here we go.
Soft Serve Podcast.
Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck. Stomping Jen. We're going to talk about vaccine equity across the globe.
I think we're going to have to change to this music.
Why?
Because you sing every episode now.
It fills my heart with joy. You know what else fills my heart with joy?
What is that?
Talking to experts. And we're going to say hello to our expert here, Risa Silverman. Hello, Risa.
Oh, she's muted.
Oh, here. Good grief.
He muted everybody. He was mute happy tonight.
Yeah, I am just mute happy left and right. Thank you, Stomping Jen. Let's try again. Hello, yes. Risa.
Go ahead, Risa.
Hello. It's very nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us. When I heard that you were involved with this fundraiser for global vaccine equity, I really wanted to talk to you and help you get the word out about this, because I think it's really important what you're doing. But before we dive into all of that, I just wanted to give you an opportunity just to tell us maybe a little bit more about yourself. I tend to give the 20,000-foot view of people and maybe leave out important details when I do introductions. So just tell us about yourself.
All right, let's see. I have been working in public health since high school because I've always been thinking healthcare is a right. And so that's sort of my background sort of professionally. And that's what I've been doing, I guess, ever since that. It's like late 80s. And I'm a community organizer and I work at UMass. So I'm in Western Massachusetts, and I just been going through the COVID like everybody else and wondering what my role is, because I work in public health. And as we all know, public health's having the limelight, but it sort of brought me to this moment where I'm working on this project with other people, and it's really fun and educational for me as well.
Can I ask you what got you interested in public health when you were in high school? That seems like a really young age to kind of grab onto a lifelong interest, and I'm curious about that.
That's a good question. So in high school, I was sick of high school. And so they had something called, I think it was called creative studies, where you could not be in high school and you could do something in the community. And I happened to have 3 aunts and uncles who worked at Planned Parenthood in downtown Philadelphia. So that was sort of, I heard about that. My uncle was an OBGYN, and my and his wife was an options counselor, and my other uncle was a phys ed teacher, and he did options counseling. Anyway, so I got to work in the development office at Planned Parenthood, and I got to meet all these great women, and I stuffed envelopes when we used to have envelopes stuff and put stamps on things, and I just loved it. And so I think that was where I was like, oh, health, public health, Planned Parenthood, women's health, it all just made sense. And I think there's a lot of justice in it that I really am attracted to.
That's interesting. And as a public health educator, what do you do? What do you focus on?
So right now I do a different kind of public health. So I started off by working as a staff assistant in Planned Parenthood when I got out of college. And then I worked as a secretary in a health clinic. And then I actually worked for CISA, which is Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture, when it first started, which it was like 25 years ago. And I was a participatory evaluator. So I got my master's in public health, and then I did CISA work. So as a public health educator, I like the community organizing aspect. So I like bringing people together and coming up with ideas that we would never have if we weren't together.
So does that involve teaching workshops, bringing people in to solve problems that are facing a community, that kind of stuff?
Such a good question. So public health is a lot of different things. So I always lean towards the democratic education part of public health, where we don't know the best answer to a health problem. We have to ask people what they think the problem is. So that's sort of my angle. So I don't do a lot of content trainings and stuff, but I do teach one class on community development and health education, where I talk about different skills you can use to bring people together. And
I've heard you talk about public health in a number of different contexts before this conversation. And one of the things that I've heard you say over and over again, that one of the keys to public health education is reaching the right people and communicating effectively. Is that an ethos that kind of underlies all of what you do in public health education?
I'd say you and I, our experience, because we've worked together, COVID-related issues, communication is key during a pandemic.
Okay.
And so it's not really my specialty, but it's what public health should specialize in, is always communicating clearly with a good message to the right people at the right time. So I guess I'm a generalist, so I sort of skirt the edges of different aspects of public health. So.
Okay. And we've mentioned it a couple of times here. The big public health crisis we're all facing right now is this COVID-19 stomping Jen, this pandemic, right? And one of the things that has recently happened is this vaccine has become available, and people.
Oh, there's more than one.
Right. 3 vaccines, I believe. Right? Maybe 4. Maybe 4.
There's several in the world.
Yeah, and while we're doing a relatively decent job here in this country of starting to get people vaccinated, that's not the case across the world, and that's one of the reasons we're here to talk. Before we dive into that, though, I just wanted to talk a little bit just about what a vaccine is, because I think there could be people who listen to this who might not exactly know what a vaccine is. Like, they know they should get it. They know people are telling them to get it, but they may not know what it is and like what it does. So I just wanted to cover that real quick. And I don't know if you could just help fill us in on the details there, Risa.
So I was thinking about what part I could explain easily. And I think the reason why vaccination is so important is when we are mostly vaccinated, meaning herd immunity is the term a lot of us hear, the virus can't mutate very well because it doesn't have anywhere to go. So the whole idea for all of us is get as many people vaccinated so we can slow the virus down, and it can't mutate, because if it keeps mutating, then our vaccines will not work anymore. And the other thing about the vaccine is it prevents major disease and death, It protects all our health workers, and it protects the most vulnerable people everywhere. And then it doesn't overburden our health system. So it makes overall a milder disease for the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What?
Do you have anything to add to that?
What? I don't know anything about vaccines.
Okay.
So I have nothing to add to that. I'm sorry.
Yep. And the fundraiser that we're here to talk about is on May 1st, 2021. And that date wasn't picked arbitrarily, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of that date?
You're right. So originally we thought we'll do it on May the 1st because that's the day that the Biden administration said everyone in the United States would have access to an appointment to get a vaccination. And it just so happens we're beating that timeline because by April 19th, everyone hopefully is eligible in the United States.
Right. And so tell us about the fundraiser that we're doing here. And why you decided we needed to do this fundraiser.
Okay. Well, so going back to some of your earlier question, I usually work really hyper locally. Like I usually work in my town or region or county. So I'm even like struck by myself, like, why are I'm working on something globally? But I really think that it was such an opportunity for all of us to connect our experience with the vaccine world to the globe, because we're all at risk unless no one's at risk with this pandemic. So it really connects us, it's remarkable how it connects us. So the project came about really serendipitously, which I did look up that word in order to say it right. And I do like that word, but I never use it. So I kept seeing everyone's glee when they were getting vaccinated. Like on Facebook, it was everywhere, and social media. People were so happy and they were getting their vaccine. So I was thinking originally, wouldn't it be great if everyone could make a small donation towards the rest of humanity who aren't yet able to get vaccinated because there's not enough vaccine and poorer countries don't have access to it, which I assume we'll get to. Wait, what was your original question?
Stumping Jen, what the heck did I ask? To tell us about the fundraiser and why you decided to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I put the idea on Facebook. There's just this brainstorm, and I wanted to see what people thought, because could we somehow magically create an app where people could sit after they get vaccinated and they're waiting their 15 minutes, that they could just spend, put $10 in an app and it would go to support global vaccination. So people liked the idea, quote unquote, and some people wanted to get together and talk about it. So I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. And then someone said, how about a fundraiser? Because I wasn't thinking of an event at first. So we decided we would open up a way for people to make donations, and then we would culminate in this event on May the 1st. So then it was a matter of, well, who are we going to fundraise for? And I learned about the People's Vaccine, which we could talk about a little bit later, but that's like a coalition of many groups all over the world trying to figure out a way to address the barriers to global vaccine equity.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. And before we dive into that and the particulars of the fundraiser event, I was looking over some of the statistics around global vaccination for COVID-19, and I was shocked. Like, how on earth are we in a situation where globally 76% of all of these vaccines have gone to just 10 countries, with at least 30 countries not having had any vaccine at all? Like, how does that happen?
Right. So the issue of capitalism and the profit margin in pharmaceutical companies and patents are a really big part of the problem, because the pharmaceutical companies are generally, there's a lot of public dollars that go to them while they're doing the research and development. But there's the issue of a big profit margin. So poorer countries without access to the cash that the first world countries have really makes it a big obstacle.
Patents.
So I didn't even think about this.
Yeah,
Can
go
we
ahead.
just talk about this for a second?
Yeah.
Because that's what the fundraiser is about, right? So we're talking about this idea of global vaccination equity.
Right.
And I don't think that I have, until just now, put that together, that there are countries out there that don't have cash for the vaccination
So there's
for their people, right?
right.
Yeah, can I quote somebody here? This is a good opportunity to do this. Do you know who Jonas Salk is, Stomping Jen?
I have heard the name before.
He is the creator of the polio vaccine.
Yes,
And-
that's why I've heard it.
Right. And somebody asked him, right, once who owned his discovery, who owned his vaccine. Do you know what he said?
Everybody.
He said the people. He said there is no patent. Could you patent the sun?
Is that what he said?
That's exactly what he said. That is a quote. Now, this is an outrage that people in developing countries across the world don't have access to this vaccine because of these patents.
Well, it's like sorry, I know I'm going to keep repeating myself, but like, like I get like the New York Times and the Boston Globe and the CNN, and like they talk about all these countries vaccinating Israel, and they talk about these big countries, and I never put it together. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again.
Well, let me read some more statistics for you.
Yeah, read some statistics.
83% of shots that have gone into arms worldwide have been administered in high and upper middle income countries, and only 0.1% of doses have been administered in low income countries.
Like, what are low income countries? Do we have examples or no?
Yeah, there is a New York Times article called the Vaccine Tracker. It's a live site where they update all of this, right? And I'm going to have the link to that in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And so you can go on there and look and see what the New York Times defines as those lower income countries are. But I imagine they are determined based on what their GDP or something like that. Some capitalist economic parameter. But that is crazy, and it points out the striking divide, right? And you can see it, this divide even based on continents, right? Another fact here is that Africa has the slowest vaccination rate of any continent, with many of its countries yet to even start a vaccine campaign.
So what I'm hearing is that it's really important to get these fundraiser dollars into the hands of people who can help these other countries. And especially, like, how privileged are we in America that there are people who have access to vaccinations and don't even want to get it because they have some cockamamie idea about what it could do to them.
Yeah. Vaccine hesitancy.
Yes.
Right. And that's a privileged position to have. Could you shed any light on that, Risa?
Yes, I will shed a little, because in terms of my public health hat, someone corrected me when I said hesitancy, and they said vaccine readiness, because it is important to think it is a new vaccine. It's normal to wonder about it. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to make room for people like that. I mean, I think the overall privilege is that we think we get the vaccine and we can do whatever we want. And first of all, that isn't true. But second of all, there's so many people in the world who are still getting COVID there's 90% of ICUs are filled in many parts of the world right now. And also in the United States, the rate has gone up 30%. All that to say, with public health, we try not to be judgmental. So hesitancy sounds like we're judging communities for being hesitant, but really we should own the fact that it is new. And it in like a lot of people I know who were hesitant are now getting it. So even within a month or two, I think people are opening up. But
it's interesting. In a lot of the contexts I've heard that term, vaccine hesitancy, it's more around political belief, and maybe that's the punditry, the media punditry kind of seizing on that concept and twisting it to their own means.
Well, there's like that guy who owns some gym down in New Jersey who he is restricting people who have been vaccinated to enter his gym because he says his claim is that it somehow changes your RNA and it's contagious or some really, really off the wall kind of
frightening
statement.
So it sounds like fear and misinformation are enemies of
science,
public health initiatives.
Yes, misinformation for sure.
Now, how, thinking back to the global problem of under-vaccination, so in these lower income countries, as this New York Times article defines them, how does the Global Vaccine Equity Initiative aim to begin to fix these inequities?
So, I mean, I think my overall purpose with all my friends who are doing this with me is to just show a little bit of solidarity, because this is a huge problem. And there is the World Health Organization is involved, in COVAX, you might have heard, is their way of reaching low-income communities with vaccine. Mm-hmm. So it's just a trickle of the vaccines that are needed in the countries that you were just talking about, but it's something. So I really felt it was important to make our connection more than anything, because it's such a big problem. We're not going to raise millions of dollars, et cetera, but we're also educating people, because when you want to donate money, you can see the 4 organizations we chose. Many of them are involved in the People's Vaccine Campaign. And one of them is a small organization. It isn't, but it's really good because you can customize where you put your dollars. So it means you can look up the organization and see what they do and learn a little bit more about the advocacy. And a lot of it is about that advocacy around the something called a TRIPS waiver, which the United States is obstructing. The waiver would be about that patent waiver. So a lot of countries are ready to waive the patents, but the rich countries, including the United States, are not letting that happen. So that's still in play. And so a couple of organizations are working on advocacy around that.
And I just want to mention the donations, right? And I will include the link to donate, both
Great.
In my social media posts and in the podcast show notes. They go to awesome. these 4 organizations. You ready, Stomping Jen? Mm-hmm. Justice is Global, mm-hmm. Oxfam America, Right to Health in Action, and Public Citizen. And I think it's the Oxfam America, which is linked with the People's Vaccine Initiative. I think they're sponsoring that. Now, here's a question. I want to talk a little bit about these patents, right? Because I think there are people listening to this who might think, well, pharmaceutical companies deserve to own these patents, right? They deserve to be able to make money off of their products. What do we say to that? How do we counter those questions? Or how do we answer them? Maybe we don't even counter them, but how do we answer those questions?
I mean, I think in general, it is that they should be able to cover their costs and they should make a reasonable profit, but they shouldn't make an unreasonable profit. And I think that that's the critical part. So I think they gave an example that Pfizer is selling 2 doses of the vaccine for $39, which is around an 80% profit margin. So that puts it like way beyond the reach of any country but the wealthiest countries. So I think that that's just an example of they don't need to make an 80% profit, clearly.
So $40 for 2 doses represents an 80% profit? That's crazy to me. Mm-hmm. Like, because I feel like I would pay, I feel like I would pay that.
For 2 doses.
And they're making that much profit off of that. I guess what I'm saying is they could be charging 40%. 80% less for that.
Yeah, what is your question? You're looking at me like
I'm saying I've been so bamboozled by the healthcare system that I think $40 for that series of shots is a great deal. I'd open up my wallet and put two 20s on the table and say, give me a shot. And I am shocked to learn that that represents an 80% profit.
Well, because there's like probably not a lot of compound in there.
Right.
It's probably mostly water.
Right.
Or something. I don't know.
I know. We're not scientists.
We're not scientists.
I'm not that kind of scientist.
We're not even going to pretend to be scientists. But
we know that the pharmaceuticals make a lot of money.
Right.
We don't see any poor ones.
Right. I mean, I think like, sorry, I have to put my management hat on for 2 seconds, right? So like how many...
I'm going to come across this table at you because I am riled up. Go ahead.
I'm just saying like... So you think about the development of any kind of a drug or a vaccination or something, right? So they're paying people, lots of people, and they're spending lots and lots and lots of money. So this is the argument, right? That
including public research dollars.
The R&D part of it, right? So that they're doing all this research
sponsored by taxpayers.
Until they get something. I'm just trying to make people understand how these things work from a business perspective, right? Then once it's developed, right, they want to recoup their costs, right? Quote unquote, recoup their costs or whatever. But what I'm hearing Risa say is that you are saying $40 is like, here you go. That's nothing. But to another country or low income, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And we're so conditioned to these outrageous marked up prices that I think that that's a good idea.
What?
$40.
But like then you think about it, right? Like I didn't have to pay. You didn't have to pay.
No one paid
for a vaccination. Yeah. Who paid for it?
The government paid. We did pay for it.
The government paid for it.
We are the government. We fund the government.
Okay.
We paid for it as a people, as a collective good.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what we're trying to accomplish here, right? Is that these vaccines should be made available to the people, to everyone in the world at no cost. Now, I want to read another quote.
But
go ahead.
Just to go back to what Risa said earlier about herd immunity, right? Like, what is the cost to the people if we don't have everybody vaccinated? Because then when you have people running around or countries that are not vaccinated, then it mutates and then it comes back around and then the vaccinations are ineffective. So it behooves from a public health perspective, it behooves our entire globe to get vaccinated.
Say behooves.
And to focus them onto the most vulnerable people.
Right.
In the world. So.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to read another quote.
Sorry, just your look on your face.
I like quotes. All right. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has said this. I'm quoting. At this critical moment, vaccine equity is the biggest moral test before the global community. And he adds, a COVID-19 vaccine must be seen as a global public good.
I just said that.
A people's vaccine.
Did I not? I think I must be General Antonio Guterres.
Are you going to be the next UN General
Secretary? Wait, I'm going to whip off my mask.
Pleased to meet you, Secretary General.
All right. Anyways, this is a serious topic.
But I think I support that.
Yeah, I do. Definitely.
Right. So, and I go back to that quote I read earlier by Jonas Salk, where when somebody asked him who owned his vaccine, and he was like, what the hell are you talking about? The world owns it. Mm-hmm. Why don't we think this way anymore? What has happened to us? I mean, we are facing a deadly global pandemic. Millions of people have died. Mm-hmm. Millions more would likely die and will die without this vaccine. And if these variants are allowed to run rampant across the world, what has happened to us? Why don't we
As a
think
people?
Yeah, why don't we think like Jonas Salk? Why don't we think like the UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez? Do you have any thoughts about that from a public health history perspective, Risa? Like, how did we get to this place?
Well, I mean, it's the free market in healthcare. Like, healthcare is a human right, but we don't treat it that way in our country anyway. It's like, the market forces dictate. And I was just talking to a friend who needs a lot of dental work, and he can't afford the dental work. So, I mean, we just don't see healthcare as a right. And I think that's a huge part of the problem. So late stage capitalism, the whole thing, it really affects. I mean, I think Jonas Salk he might have been unique even in his time.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're using him as an example, but you don't really know the mindset of the public. That's one person.
What public?
Whatever time period Jonas Salk lived in.
I believe that was the 40s or 50s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think the world was much, much different back then.
I don't know. What were the pharmaceutical companies like back then? Maybe they weren't like these huge, massive.
I mean,
they couldn't have.
There was only one drug back then, penicillin.
Well, and radium, right?
Penicillin and radium. That's all they had.
To shoot you up with radiation.
So it is, well, I mean, the United States also, like, I feel like we talk about equity only when it's convenient because, I feel like in the last few years, we've been a little bit humbled, but we're going to vaccinate everyone first. And we're actually going to buy enough vaccines to vaccinate people 3 times over. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, we do give a little bit of money to that COVAX effort, a couple $2 billion, but we should be giving more than that. So, and just just for another fact, the WHO in the spring of 2020, they put together a whole equitable allocation framework, and they prioritized who should be prioritized, but the vaccine ended up being distributed to the highest bidder, and that's what happened. So
the World Health Organization said that?
They provided a framework.
Yeah.
And then whatever happened anyway. I think, right? That's what I heard.
So the highest bidder got all the vaccine. So Mike Ryan the WHO does these like twice weekly updates, and I listen to them whenever I can. Yeah, they're really good. They're very down to earth. So Mike Ryan is one of the doctors who's always on it, and he just, echoing what you just said, what the Secretary General said, is the vaccines aren't in the right places and they're not going to the right people. And he just said it 2 days ago, and he said it like, they say it so frequently, but the power, it's like we don't have the power in the right places sometimes to make the moral right decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you hear about so many doses of vaccine in this country going unused or getting thrown away because they're spoiled or something, it's just a tragedy, right? Because that means potentially lives lost elsewhere. So this People's Vaccine Alliance, I want to talk about them a little bit, which the fundraiser that Risa is sponsoring is helping to support. They want to make sure that vaccines are produced rapidly at scale and made available for all people in all countries free of charge. Right? This goes back to we want to see what's happened here with our own government buying these doses of vaccine and providing them to people free of charge. We want to see this happen and reflected across the world in an equitable way.
Yes.
And they have some simple demands, these People's Alliance. I'm going to read them. Okay, they have a game plan, right? Some goals. Maybe we can talk about these. They want to make sure the vaccine is purchased at true cost prices and provided free of charge to people. Now, when I hear this, what that means to me is nobody wants to bankrupt the pharmaceutical companies, right? They want to buy these important vaccines for what they cost. So nobody is saying that the pharmaceutical companies have to make this stuff for free and just give it out. Is my interpretation of this right, Risa?
Yeah, I think totally. Nobody wants that. Yeah, that they would get their costs covered. They would make a reasonable profit, I think, is the plan.
Right. And if governments, right, are struggling to be able to afford purchasing these things at cost, that's where assistance from wealthier nations can come into play, and that's where awareness, like you're doing, Risa, and fundraisers like you're doing, can assist this initiative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it is raising our awareness, right? Like we really are in it together, and it's not just a moral thing; it's an economic thing, which I always hate saying because that's true about so many things. It's always good for all of us to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, it hurts me to hear you say you hate having to say that it's a moral thing, because it's like the most important part of this in my mind. And like, we're so conditioned now to, I think, feel like we're doing something wrong when we want to invoke the moral argument, right? Like, I think that is the most important argument, right? Is like, what this action I'm going to take, how might it hurt or benefit somebody,
Mm-hmm.
versus what does this cost in dollars? I don't know. Am I wrong, Stomping Jen?
I don't
Risa.
Well, part of what I was saying is we always have to say, well, there's an economic reason to do this also. And that, it should just be just the moral reason is good enough. But truly, our world economies are not we're all linked that way too. We all know that. And so
That's a good point.
This is an economic decision. It should be, but I feel like in our country, we sort of are very short-sighted and we're me first. Mm-hmm. And somebody even wrote that on the Facebook. Like, nobody wrote anything negative except one person who's like, well, we all need to get vaccinated first. So, I shouldn't get vaccinated before a healthcare worker in another country. I'm not doing healthcare work.
Right.
I'm on the front lines. So.
I mean, did they have any substantive argument other than a thought that I'm just curious, like, if you were able, if there was a dialogue or an exchange where we were able to understand this person's position.
I chose not to have a dialogue with them.
On
Facebook.
Yeah. This is for not having Facebook arguments. I fully support that. No, I'm just curious. Stomping Jen, I have been accused of standing on soapboxes in the past and shouting moral arguments until I'm blue in the face. So to me, it is the most important and often the only argument to make. So I'm just shocked that other people don't see it that way sometimes. That's all. All right, so we talked about the cost of vaccines, and we've established here that pharmaceutical companies, by selling these things for what they cost to make, aren't going to lose money, and that's okay. Now, the People's Vaccine Initiative here, they also want to prevent monopolies on vaccine and treatment production. Does anybody have any insight on what that means?
Can you say it again?
They want to prevent monopolies on vaccine and treatment production.
Yeah.
I think that goes to the patent
stuff.
So I heard that's how the flu vaccine is always created. It's like there's some global communication that every scientist is doing all year long to figure out the next flu formula in the vaccine. So we have a model for it.
Okay.
Now, I want somebody to fact check me on this, but I reject monopolies.
What?
First of all, let me say that. not the board game Stomping Giant,
Yeah,
Monopolies.
we do reject the board games.
No, there's a precedent here. Let me tell you something. I believe Elon Musk, who is the owner of Tesla, who makes those electric cars, early on published the manufacturing blueprints and the specifications for his electric engines and gave them to his competitors and said, the global good of me making these patents available to all of you outweighs me holding on to them. Right? And so he just gave them away. If it wasn't him, it was somebody else, but I think it was him.
It's this whole idea that if like you're trying to build the future and innovation comes from collaboration and you hold something secret, somebody else might have the key to unlock the secret of the thing you're working on. And if you hold it to your chest and you don't put it out there.
And this is part of, I believe, what Biden forced some of these pharmaceutical companies to do with this Defense Production Act, right? He said, screw you, Pfizer, or whoever it was.
I don't think he said screw.
He did, and we are gonna take your vaccine, and I'm gonna go over here to your competitor, and we're gonna have your competitor make it because we need so much vaccine that
they have all the equipment,
right? But my point is, why do we have to force them to do that? Why do they have to be cajoled into doing that? Again,
because they're capitalist companies and they report to their shareholders.
I can't handle this conversation.
Do you have a sound for capitalism? Do you
no.
Yes.
Where's the cha-ching money? No. Where's the cha-ching? I mean, that's our whole country's business model. I mean, that's what it is.
Okay.
I'm a company. I created this thing. I want to get paid for this thing. I now am a public company. I have to report to my shareholders.
We are facing a global emergency.
This is what we're talking about, Sawtooth Frank.
You set aside those values and to help people.
Right.
Why can't these companies do it? This is why I support the People's Vaccine Alliance.
Okay.
So I know another argument why.
Yes.
Is it would stamp out innovation. If they weren't going to make a lot of money, they wouldn't be so creative and give us, new things that we need and stuff. I'd heard that argument. I'm not making it myself.
I'm going to go back to Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
This guy innovates as long as the day is, and he gave away these patents.
Okay.
Right? All I'm saying is being generous and helping people doesn't curb your innovation.
Right, but everybody doesn't believe that.
All right.
And there's no stopping it, right? So like we're not going to solve this issue because people
Bullshit. We're not getting off here till we solve it.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
And
please.
people are tribal. We know this. These are all like ingrained, anthropological, cultural, societal.
Well, we could socialize medicine.
Right. I mean, we could change these things, of course, but, I'm just, you can't just wave your pencil and hit the soundboard and it will go away. So I think the thing that we can do is focus on what's in front of us, which is, what Risa and her friends have done, which is put together a fundraiser.
Right. And I'll just say, I think the People's Vaccine Alliance recognizes this, right?
Yes.
Because one of their other demands, right, is just to ensure that the vaccine is available at affordable prices. All right. Short of changing the world, we can agree that that is a reasonable demand.
Sure. Yes.
Right, that the People's Vaccine Alliance is making.
Yes.
Now, Risa, you mentioned this. This is right on their list of demands. Implement fair allocation of the vaccine that prioritizes health workers and other at-risk groups in all countries. Right? Yes. So, before we move on to people here in the United States who have a BMI of 25.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should make sure that healthcare workers on the African continent are being vaccinated.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer if we were organized a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a demand, and we support that demand. Okay. This next demand, I'm going to read this. Okay. Ensure full participation of governments in developing countries, as well as civil society from North and South, in decision-making for and about the vaccines and other COVID-19 technologies, and ensure transparency and accountability of all decisions. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand. I think this means that the richest countries in the world shouldn't be the ones making the decisions about how we handle this COVID-19 problem globally. I think that's what that means.
It's saying get everybody involved.
Right. But everybody doesn't mean the United States. It means everyone.
Right.
Right. We like this demand?
Do we like this demand?
The other thing they've been saying is COVAX, which is the worldwide effort to get to low-income countries, isn't very transparent.
Tell us a little bit about this COVAX.
So it's the way that all the governments in the world are trying to distribute some vaccine to the lower income countries. They're making deals with pharmaceutical companies, but they're not open about it, so nobody knows exactly what the deals are. So, so some people refer to COVAX as a vaccine like brand, but it's not. It's like the program.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more I hear about this COVAX, I don't like it. You have to have transparency.
I mean,
yeah.
Seems fishy.
Okay.
It stands for COVID-19 Vaccines Global Access. So.
All right. Boy, this is a big question, but I'm going to ask it. And I think I know the answer to this. What role does politics play in public health education and people getting vaccinated?
So if you know the answer, we don't have to answer it, right?
I'm curious about your thoughts. Are administrations important? Like, would we be in a worse place globally, do you think, if was still president?
Come on, man.
Is that his name? Yes, definitely.
Do you want me to go back and beep that out? I can.
He who must not be named.
Come on, man.
I'm going to go beep it back out.
Beep it back out.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I mean, I think we're definitely we're in a much better place than we would be. And I think that the Biden administration has a lot of decent policies, but they can't undo all of the competition and free market capitalism. Well, they could, but they're not doing that. So I think we still are an obstacle in terms of getting the distribution to be more equitable.
Right. And the divisive political forces in this country play a role, right? Because Biden has said, I'm going to get N number of United States citizens vaccinated in the first 100 days or whatever it is. And, they're thinking about making sure they hit that goal before the midterms come around or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're playing that that U.S. national political calculus before they're thinking about benefiting people outside of our country and on another continent.
Yes. Bingo. Yeah.
And Jonas Salk is rolling over in his grave. He's not happy. This is BS. I don't like this.
Well, it's like all this short-term thinking, which, I feel like is what all our politics is. Because if you did the long-term thinking, you would distribute them equitably because that's the only way to kick the pandemic.
Right.
Just like it's there. It's the facts. but we don't do that. We're like, well, we'll vaccinate everyone in our country because it'll make us all feel good. Makes
we
us
can
happy.
move freely about our borders, but then they don't,
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm still struggling with how would we get people to care about this, right? We do events, we raise awareness. So tell us about this event. Tell us about the fundraiser. What is this going to look like?
So, and I like to be clear, like the fundraiser's on now. People can donate anytime.
Yeah.
And then
is there going to be an actual event somebody can log on and do something? Okay.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Truly. So on May 1st for 1 hour, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have, it'll be more like educational and entertaining too. So we have musicians and poets who are donating some of their performances. And I can tell you about them a little bit.
Yeah,
and
I'd love to hear that.
We have speakers from the organizations we're fundraising for. And so like one example is Tunika is going to come. She's from India. She is an organizer for Right to Health Action. So they have people all over the country doing, or all over the world doing organizing. And she's going to tell her own family story and also what Right to Health Action is trying to do. So we're going to have a few speakers like that. And Phil Straub is the MC. He's a DJ on WRSI. He also works at Bay State Franklin as a radiology technician. So he's got that. So it'll be really lively. And so I think it'll raise awareness and build excitement for like trying to reach our goal, our fundraising goal.
What is your fundraising goal?
So we set it at $10,000.
Okay.
And we're about a third of the way there. So that feels good. And definitely, hoping that people, will do small and large donations, whatever works for them. Because part of me was like, if everyone donated $10, part of it is the number of donors as much as the amount we raise to just to show a little bit of solidarity. Do
you have anybody doing matching?
So we don't have that happening yet. But we've been talking about that idea. So I'm open to brainstorming that. Exactly how to do that. Yeah.
You mentioned you might have some musicians and poets.
We've got the Expandable Brass Band. They're based in the Pioneer Valley. They're an activist street band, and they're really fun. Leo Wang, I don't know how you say it. Hwang is a poet, and he's going to do a piece. And then Pete Newland, I don't know if people know the band Fat, which is really famous locally, but he's known nationally too. So he's going to play a song. And he also started a Facebook page to thank healthcare workers. So he's going to talk about that a little bit. And he's got like different famous musicians like dedicating a song to healthcare workers and stuff. And Rui Santos is from Cape Verde, and he's a reggae musician. And he's going to perform. And Michelle Wilson is an award-winning blues vocalist. And Nicole Young is a poet in the Pioneer Valley who is going to read some poetry. So that's our lineup so far.
Cool.
That's a great lineup.
Yeah, Nicole's hooked up with the Tack Bear Press. Nicole Young.
The press.
Tack Bear Press.
Why don't you tell people about that?
I don't need to. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, tell us about Attack Bear Press since you mentioned it. What is it?
They're just a local. We've had Jason Montgomery and on a few times. He is one of the co-founders.
And how is this connected to Attack Bear Press?
Nicole Young is connected to Attack Bear Press.
Okay, sorry.
I think. Yes? No?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That sounds... So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of a pithy name for the event. And so far I've come up with Global Vaccine Equity Gathering. So if you have any ideas tonight or later, let me know.
What do we like? Spectacular.
Oh, I know. I love
We call everything a spectacular.
Spectacular. But I stole that from Moulin Rouge.
The Global Vaccine Equity Spectacular. There you have it.
Spectacular.
Well, I didn't know if it sounded too positive or too upbeat, or like we thought of celebrate. It's not a celebration, but maybe it is okay to be spectacular anyway.
Yeah, I like that. Spectacular.
Spectacular. You have to do it twice, though. You only do it once.
No, I only do it once.
You have to do it
I
twice.
I reject using spectacular twice in any context. Yeah, I mean that is a great lineup, and I'm going to be posting again a link to the Facebook event in the show notes.
A night.
A
night for the people for global vaccine equity.
I'm glad you're struggling a little because it makes you feel better. So.
There's a lot of words in there.
I like spectacular. I think this is going to be spectacular.
You have to.
I mean, based on what I've heard in terms of the talent that will be appearing during the event.
Yeah, you do have a great lineup.
Yeah. Now there is a noticeable lack of local podcasters, but that's okay. That's fine.
We can post this on our Facebook page.
Yes. Well, I think this is a great thing.
The other thing
trying to do here. No, please go ahead.
I just want to mention that there's just a great group of volunteers who came together. We've never worked together before. And so we'll have a Zoom meeting with 2 of us and then 4 of us. And just everybody's helping where they can. It's pretty fun.
How did you connect with these others? Was there
there was a couple through Facebook, and then I've been tapping into. I'm like, so do you want to help? Do you want to help? One is my across the street neighbor. So yeah, completely a little bit random, and then tapping into people's resources with their skills they have. So it's been fun.
Were you surprised at the response you got? Did you have to sell this?
No, I mean, I wasn't. And also it's is this clear enough to people? But it does seem like it. And it's nice when people donate, you're like, okay, it's clear enough for them to donate. So, so I think it says it all, and people have been finding it really easy to join in. So that feels good.
I wonder if it has anything to do with acknowledging how privileged we are here in this country to have access to this vaccine, but also what a total clusterfuck and shit show it was to get access to the vaccine. I'm just wondering if that anxiety around that maybe resonates with people, and gets them, maybe it's a little easier for them to put themselves in the shoes of people in other countries who don't have access at all.
Right. We had this temporary, will I get it by May? And then there's people who, will I get it by 2023? So,
yeah, but I'm thinking about, a month or so ago, 2 months ago, people were describing, getting appointments like the Hunger Games. It was, people were fighting for their access to it. And I'm just, I'm not trying to upplay that, right? Again, that sits in this bubble of privilege we've been talking about, of having the vaccines here in the first place. But, it certainly gets me thinking about it a little more deeply, about what a struggle it, has been to get access to it here.
Right. I mean, and also, is that related to the amount of glee people have when they get it? It's I feel would there not be as much glee expressed if it was so easy? You just go to the doctor and get it, and everyone could get it all on the same day. We all got it. Then maybe it wouldn't be so exhilarating.
Well, sorry. I have to go back to the fact that we've been living a year in a state of anxiety over this pandemic. So I think that it's not so much, it's just, I think, yes, to answer your question, if we all got on the same day, I think there would still be the same amount of glee. And because it's a weight off, it's one step closer to this pre-pandemic normalcy that I think everybody has been struggling with. I mean, there have been so many roller coaster, anxiety-filled days for so many reasons during this year that we've all just lived through. And, we're sort of like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're still not even there. It's like you can see it, we struggle because our kids don't have access to a vaccine yet. And like, we don't even know when that will be, so like we're literally only talking about adults.
Yeah.
And then there's this like still for those of us with children, like, what do we do?
Yeah. Now imagine you're a healthcare worker
Right.
or an essential worker in a country that can't even get any vaccine.
Right.
Imagine what that anxiety is like.
Right. Right. So now you know that there are people around the world, and you're just sitting with that agitation and that, that added complexity of like, I don't have access to this thing. Right.
Right. Which is why everybody listening to this
Right.
is going to go to our show notes, is going to go to the Facebook page for the People for Global Vaccine Equity, find this fundraiser, and I'm going to provide a link to it, so there'll be no excuse.
Yeah.
And you are going to donate something, anything.
We need to get you some match funding.
Get on it.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Get on that, Stomping
I'm
Jen.
not very good at fundraising and development, but I know other people who are.
Well, get the hookup
Yeah.
going.
That's great. Thank you for posting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I don't do this always, but it does feel like it's really good to connect and support people around the world. It's like a little something.
Yeah.
And also, just one of the organizations already said it's helping them. So they're so small that just having a little bit of income, this extra income.
Yeah.
So that's nice to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think it's nice to have a grassroots kind of effort happening with a curated list of organizations. It's not like you're just donating to some random website, that you don't know exactly where your money's going to. It sounds like it's been well vetted and thought, accompanied, where the money will go to and why it will go to those organizations.
Go to the fundraiser site. Look at the links. It's spelled out there. It's very clear.
Yeah.
This money is going to go and help people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We are going to stop Jonas Salk from rolling over in his grave.
That's right.
Are you sure he's dead?
He's just flipping over constantly.
Can we confirm he's not alive anymore?
Oh, he's long gone.
Okay.
He was like 70 in 1950. Yeah. No, I think he is
He's
departed.
no longer here. Okay.
All right. Anything else, Risa, that we need to talk about here related to your fundraiser, related to public health?
I think that covers it, except anyone who listens and wants to reach out with like an idea related to this, we are all ears. We're just figuring it out as we go. So,
yeah, because I would say too, right? Like May 1st is the event that you're working towards, but I imagine that this is not going to end on May 1st. And there will be like opportunities still to be involved in this effort after. I'm
glad you said that. If you're listening to this and it's after May 1st, shame on you.
Oh my Jesus.
Second, still go to this site, right? The fundraiser site. Look for these organizations that are involved in global vaccine equity and donate something, because this problem is not going to go away after May 1st. This problem is going to continue. Disparities in healthcare around the world are going to continue. And it is the moral and right thing for us to do something to try to counteract those inequities and those disparities. So I don't care if you're listening to this in April of 2025. That's in the future, isn't it?
That's way in the future.
Thank you. Still, we're still going to be struggling with this issue. and you are going to go and find the People's Vaccine Alliance. You're going to find, let me find my notes here, Stomping Ground. You're going to find Justice is Global. You're going to find Right to Health Action. You're going to find Public Citizen. Okay, Oxfam America. And you're going to donate, and you're going to help people.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Right. Okay? You don't get off the hook because you're listening to this after May 1st, 2021.
Awesome.
Right, Stomping Jen?
You're like staring into my soul right now. Okay. It's freaking me out.
This is important. I feel intensely about this. I'm not kidding.
I can feel your intensity across the room.
I have said this before.
Yes.
I have an undergraduate degree in microbiology.
It's true.
I know a thing or two, and I feel connected to Jonas Salk. And I want Mr. Salk to stop spinning in his grave over all of this.
All right.
All of these inequities. All right. Risa. I'm going to transition to a couple of fun questions. Okay.
She's like, thank God.
All right. My first fun question for you is, where is Jonas Salk buried?
Oh my God.
Oh, man.
No, I'm kidding.
He's kidding. He's totally kidding.
Sorry.
He just needed to say Jonas Salk's name one more time.
Yes. Sorry.
Now you lost your questions.
I've thrown myself into a loop.
I can ask the questions because I know them by heart.
Yeah. So, okay. When you're...
Risa, when you're not working in public health,
yes.
What do you like to do for fun?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, that is a fun question. I don't remember. Let's see. Because it's late at night now. Oh, let's see. I just started doing pastels. My COVID skill is pastels. I took a online pastel class.
Do you do painting or like chalk?
Pastel
chalk,
is
yes.
Pastel
like
is
chalk.
like a thing.
Its own tool.
It's like a crayon / chalk.
Why do I think that's paint?
It's pastel. Forget it.
And also, I started to paint a little bit. And also, partly it's because my kids moved out. So I have a room where I can put art supplies in one place. I know where they are when I want to use them. So that's been really fun. So I do that. And I really like cooking. And that's been really nice to do instead of Zoom, take a break and do that.
Do you like cooking for people or do you like cooking for yourself?
I don't know. People. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Plural of person. COVID concept. I like cooking for other people. And my daughter sometimes comes over masked and then I feed her outside and it's so fun. So,
it's like having a stray.
Changing.
Oh, stop it. Oh, God.
What?
A little bit. So, yeah. It's hard to answer that because it's like spring and I just got vaccinated. It's like, what will life be like in the next couple months?
Yeah. Cool. All right. Our last question. And
you can ask the question.
Yes. And I'm going to make a confession. I cannot lie to our podcast audience. I provided this question ahead of time. Mostly because Risa mentioned it. We do know each other outside of this episode.
You're playing favorites with our guests now.
Well,
I'm very grateful.
I'm allowed to. I'm the host. I get to choose who gets the questions in advance. But Risa will attest. I did not send any other questions in advance.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you for lying. Okay. All right. I'm going to ask the question now, Stomping Jen. This is the question that all guests get. And it is the best question we ask always on this show. Are you ready? Risa, are you ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
What have you experienced that you cannot explain?
So I did get to think about it. And first my ideas were, I was like, I don't think this counts as an answer. But then I thought of something late in the day because I truly cannot explain it. When my daughter was very little, and we sang one particular song, and she sobbed every time we sang it. And so it just made us feel like, did she live another life? How does she know this? Does she know the song? And why does it make her cry? And we could never explain it.
Can you share the song with us?
It was the Rockabye Baby song, that weird lyric song, Rockabye Baby on the treetop. But she was an infant. She didn't know the words per se, but...
maybe in a previous life, she was the baby in the cradle.
It got dropped.
Okay, that could be it. I mean, it was. I felt like the melody really sent her into a place, and so then we wouldn't sing it. But then a month later, we'd like, let's see. So we'd sing it again, and she'd cry. So,
oh, God, I love that.
I cannot explain that. I can't explain it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sorry. No, I tortured my baby. I tried it again.
We stopped after one line, but we thought it would go away, or we thought we weren't right. That it wasn't
super
that
funny.
That could be.
That's an awesome story.
The scariest / funniest story we've ever heard on this podcast.
Love it.
Yeah, I love it.
That's a good one.
All right.
What?
Risa Silverman.
Oh.
Public health educator and expert, community organizer, community organizer of the fundraiser called People for Global Vaccine Equity. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on to talk to us about this important project.
Yep.
Okay. We appreciated you coming on here and talking to us in a fun way about a really serious topic. And I hope people listening to this, that's you listeners, are motivated and inspired to contribute to this cause. It's important. Okay. And also participate in the fundraiser. Okay. Yeah. You've heard there's going to be some really good talent there. Okay. Musicians, poets, speakers from these organizations that you're going to be donating to.
Yep. May 1st.
Right?
2021. In case you're listening to this in 2025.
And if you're listening to this and you have a vaccine in your arm, okay, you pay that shit forward and give some money to this fundraiser. Okay? Or else I am going to go to Jonas Salk's grave. Oh my God. I am going to stick electrodes into his corpse during a lightning storm. And me and Jonas Salk's animated electrified corpse are going to come and find you, and we're going to deal with you.
You can't threaten our listeners.
Oh, yes, I can.
Before.
Oh, I can. And I will, because this is important.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
Now, all of that being said, listeners.
Oh, we love you.
I love you.
Yo, after we threaten them.
But God, if you don't help out, I am going to come
zombie Jonas
find
Salk.
you with Jonas Salk. And I'm going to end. We're all going to say goodbye, and then I'm going to end the podcast on the words of Jonas Salk this evening. Okay, Risa, would you like to say goodbye, please, to our guests?
Goodbye. Thank you for listening.
Oh, I mean our listeners. I screwed up. Sorry. Let's say goodbye to our listeners.
What'd you say?
That's what I thought you said.
I said our guests.
No, you didn't.
I'm sure I did. People will verify that when they listen back.
Oh, I was thinking listeners are guests, so that's why I thought it was the same thing.
That's
but
true.
Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to everyone tunes in on May 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stomping Jen. Goodbye.
Bye now.
Okay. To my dear listeners, I'm going to say goodbye, and then I'm going to read Jonas Salk. Okay. I'm going to mute Stomping Jen and Risa, so they can't get any more words in. So it will only be the words of Jonas Salk to end this podcast. Okay. Bye now, my dear listeners. And I leave you with the words of Jonas Salk. When asked who owned the polio vaccine, he said, "The people. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun? Could you patent the sun? Could you patent the sun? Could you patent the sun?
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.